one thing that's essential about Alfred is that it's a one-stoplight town. That means that there is not a lot to do otherwise. I started to handle clay in high school and then went off to college to do something more sensible, but quickly found myself picking up classes in art. And so I dropped the liberal arts degree and enrolled in an art school. And when I finally ended up in an art program, I had some great teachers. And I can recall being in lectures, taking in the content, and simultaneously really paying attention to who they were as a teacher. At that time, I didn't realize I had an eye on a profession that involved these two realms. And I'm wondering if that will sound like what we see. Now, not everybody's here, but just get a word in your mind, jot it down.
Alfred is kind of an art school where ceramics is the hub of it.
The school began in 1900. It was the New York State School of Clayworking. And at that time, it was really geared to promoting industry and the economies of the area.
Interestingly, everyone who came to study had to also draw, they had to make pots, they had to study technique and technology. So gradually what grew up here were two schools that were like Siamese twins. One became this very important and recognized art school, and then another side, a very famous school of ceramic science and engineering. But we may be the only major art school that has grown from a ceramic root.
This idea that ceramics is such a malleable material that it can do anything. It's a metaphor for us for education. And how we teach them how to make is got to do with this tremendous breadth of what clay does.
Some of our best students have had really great plastic minds. There's nothing more plastic than clay. So this is the right school for them to come to. The students came over and they are during the show for the Cohen Gallery, and we went down the basement, we picked out all this work.
John Gill is a little bit magic. John Gill is brilliant.
On this wonderful Andrea Majolica thing from Italy. If I was going to sit down and throw a really beautiful cover jar for somebody, I think that probably the most important part of the thing is what the inside structure might be. And this would be this really great thing. So here I have this really beautiful lid that would just fit on right there. Just see how that works really nice here and say, oh, the most important part of the pot is the interior of the pot. And so you have this really great inside where you're coming in here. And you're just wonderful volume that you've now figured out that's the inside shape of a pot. So now, let's say somebody was on the wheel and they threw this as their pot.
He loves to play with words and use wordplay.
Ooh, get this form. And you're thinking of letter form, you're thinking of type, you're thinking about the corset, you're thinking about how this thing might snug into the form. And then it's oh, I got this, oh, maybe that's what I throw. And so now what I do is I'm coming in here and
when he speaks to the students, they listen closely and pay attention and think long about what he has to say.
And that's the cross-section for a covered jar. Now, it's you just have insides of volume, the outsides of volume, and that's why. And you give this to a student to throw, it's really wonderful because it tells them what the inside and the outside is, and it's really lovely.
We run two very different programs here. We run a graduate program, which is media specific. And then we run an undergraduate program, which is also very unusual in that it's not media specific. So the students never have to sign up for a major.
So, all right.
They just come and experience a wide variety of techniques. And then as seniors, they are given a space. They choose a few teachers to be their advisors.
Weather shielding it has.
And they say, okay, now what are you going to make? You're going to be an artist, what are you going to make? There's a certain amount of fear goes on there. A lot of fear happens in the studio at that point. What do you mean? You're not going to give me an assignment? No, what do you want to make?
I feel like there's not enough particles.
And students have to learn how to ask questions. Because that's really what you really have to learn how to do to be an artist, is to learn how to ask a good question.
So I won't repeat the word, but if you could just be ready to I think in general, when we advise the seniors, we meet with them weekly, often individually, sometimes in a group. You know, they have expectations of us and we have expectations of them. Something about working from your strong suit, right? Does everyone agree that that was something you did? You worked from that place? So can you I think in the end, they expect to be seen. And when you see a student, when you really do see them, you can make a connection and really make a difference. Wayne Higby, he's been at Alfred the longest. He's a great resource. He's a wonderful teacher for the graduate students.
Clay is just a lump. You know, well, what are you going to do with that lump? But again, as soon as you press your hand or begin to move, it talks. And then you just follow it. And those things that you make, then they become personalities. And they're critical of you, and they celebrate you, but there's an honesty that they deliver to you if you stay vulnerable in the making. Earth Cloud has become my masterwork of my career. It really started because there was a gentleman named Marlon Miller. He built the Performing Arts Complex for Alfred. During the process, he kept talking to me about doing something in the building. The piece is 12,000 hand-cut porcelain tile. I really wanted that feeling. It sort of made itself. Porcelain shrinks and cracks and moves. And it became this powerful experience in making. And then I had a really brilliant team. I would cut tile and say, like that, and then they would try that, and I'd come back and say, well, not quite like that, but actually yours look better than mine. And that's the luxury of being an Alfred, because the people who worked with me, because I was their teacher and worked with them, so gifted as artists and so sensitive and so smart about how to put this together, it could not happen anywhere else.
Personally, I don't have the energy to teach if I'm not in my studio. In fact, being in the studio inspires my teaching. The teaching inspires being in the studio. You know, the range of your practice travels from working with objects that we would relate to immediately as more conventionally functional, and we'd approach it really quickly. You know, a handle just invites you to grab it, right? And then you're here. Sometimes talking to my students, I'll confess and I'll say, you know, you realize I'm talking to myself as well as talking to you. So I think that you're teaching yourself as you teach others. Maybe there's a level of empathy because you're in the process. You know what the struggle is, you know what the elation is, and you know it all goes together. And you've gone through it just a few more times than the students have. So you get to tell them, stick with it. You know, when it's hardest, you're growing. When it's hardest, things are changing. Change is difficult. Write it out, you'll get there.
What do you think?
I met Matthew Metz at the ARCHIE BRAY Foundation. I went there as a summer resident. He was a 2-year resident. I remember when we first met here. I don't know if I actually said this out loud, but I thought it when I saw his work. I thought, you know, he could teach me something about surface, and I could teach him something about form. Did I say that to you? I don't remember. I have to say, not until lately I've realized what a powerful influence he has been on me. Living with, working with a full-time studio potter, it grounds my teaching. It's a fantastic resource for the students. And it reminds me of what it looks like when a practice happens at another pace.
I taught several times at small colleges, part-time, never full-time. And I saw the difference between someone who's gifted at teaching, like my wife Linda, as opposed to I was always sort of tapping my foot and waiting to get back in the studio. And students don't deserve that. I'm relatively happy to be alone all day in the studio. The isolation doesn't bother me. I think a lot of people that teach are drawn towards the interaction. You know, I think I made the right choice for myself, and it's amazing to watch Linda, who gives everything to her students. Because of her job, it's very hard to get in the studio, so there's times when she doesn't get in, but when she walks in the studio, things happen. I mean, she'll just start a whole body of new work out of the blue, and I'll be, what is that? It's amazing, but it wasn't there last time you worked. I tend to be a plotter. I move a little bit at a time, and over a couple years, I think I make a lot of growth. And because she's talking to students and having ideas sort of percolate all the time, walks into the studio and just makes.
Our work is very distinct. Myself with color and glazing. Matthew with drawing.
I just put down the mark and start drawing. It's a very intuitive process to me, but that intuition is built on repetition. I was lucky enough to have a great teacher who directed me to a local pottery called the Bethel Pike Pottery, where I was apprenticed for 2 years while going to undergraduate, which was a great combination. I think the academics gives you a broad field and a lot of information, but an apprenticeship can give you real skills. Within a college atmosphere, there's so much going on that you cannot sit and throw repetitively. And doing that is really, really powerful. Learning with your hands, attaining those skills, frees you up to make choices. It's not limiting. It opens up your ability to express yourself because you can do anything with your hands you want to.
The MFA students, I think they're using this period as a real incubator. There's an intensity of focus, there's access to facilities, they've got this vested interest in what they're doing.
Most recent forms are really coming from two-dimensional work. So I'm kind of imagining the cylinders as these flat, flat planes that rotate up and wrap around in space. So it's kind of like this canvas that comes off and then can be used in the home. These pieces here came from actually the drawings on the wall. So I made these last year. These things almost potentially function as a table, but still stand alone as an object.
So she really sees the power of how objects can instigate an activity. A teapot, for example, becomes performative, or the way that a jar just sits and the whole time it's sitting still is actually actively holding. These are effects that these objects have in spaces, on people. And Lydia's very attuned to that and sees that as a powerful place.
The role of the faculty, my role, I've always felt was to be the best, toughest, most excited member of the audience that they could meet. So they're the star of the show.
I started with this.
They're the ones. I tell my students that all the time. You are the ones. These young people will eventually be taking our place. Our job is really to make sure
Celebrate them.
that the future, in fact, will exist because we have done our job.
We're putting out into the world together.
Your generation, we understand. Teaching just happens all the time. It's a way of connecting to the world, a way of being in the world, and a way of affecting the world that I think gives me as much as I give it.